kind of came out to me, having seen it this time, was that the American people seem to have amnesia. We forget. You know, we're doing a big number now on how bad the war in Iraq was. We really haven't done it yet on Afghanistan, and if we go into Iran and so on, we'll do it again, you know. So I think something that I'm kind of coming away with is that we really have to be aware of we're being manipulated, because I thought you did it so brilliantly. I'd forgotten the putting up of the names and, you know, the people who voted for it, who didn't vote for it. And a word of thanks to representatives in the Congress who voted for it and then changed their minds and spoke out against the war. And we have one of them in the audience, and I think that's commendable. I remember you, Gary, for that. But let me just conclude by saying how...
Right here, that's unusual. How you get elected being modest, I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it's certainly worth hearing. Anyway, but be alert, you know.
Right.
Know when you're being manipulated and get connected. A lot of us are interested in peace, and seek us out, because we'd like to meet you.
By the way, I've heard no real... The only mea culpa I've heard is John Kerry was on Meet the Press, and Tim Russert asked him, "Are you sorry you voted for the war?" And John Kerry answered in a word: profoundly. And I'm sure there are other people who have said something, but you know, Richard Pearl don't get around it much anymore. I haven't seen Wolfowitz, Cheney's fly fishing, Bush is as hidden as you can be. Rumsfeld, whatever happened? I don't see him anymore. And Teddy Keddy voted against the war in the House and in the Senate, and his son Patrick in the House voted for it. I mean, this split families. And may I ask former Congressman Ackerman to kindly stand and give us his name.
I wish you wouldn't do that. Thank you. You shouldn't get applauded. I did change my mind, but I participated. I unwittingly participated in what I think was the largest fraud in American history. And I was duped. How? I'll give you the real short version. I don't subscribe necessarily to all the conspiracy theories. I think most of the people in the Congress, even who voted for the war, didn't do it because they drank bourbon and branch water or played golf with all these crazy people. I think a lot of people came to the wrong conclusion earnestly. One of the mentors I had in Congress, and I've cast a lot of votes, this was absolutely the worst one. I cast almost as many as Senator Byrd, didn't serve quite as long as him. He was one of the record holders. I served 30 years thanks to you. But I cast 16,500 and some odd votes as well. This was the worst one. And it wasn't because I didn't know how to ask the right questions, because I do. I'm good at that. It's because I believe the answers. And a lot of people believe the answers. And a lot of people not on the committees that dealt directly with this kind of things, and as you know, I chaired the subcommittee on the Middle East where the Democrats had a majority. And I was a former journalist, so I think I know how to ask a question. But one of the guys who served as one of the mentors to me in Congress was Lee Hamilton. One of the things I remember that he said during the term of his service was that presidents tend to get the intelligence that they want. Think about that, because not everybody has access to all of the intelligence on every level. We get some of it. And I remember going over to the State Department, and I said to Colin Powell, it was a meeting just he and I, 2 kids born in Brooklyn. And I left, I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, make sure you're there. a lot of us have tremendous faith in you. And he shook his head. He understood what I was saying. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. One of the smarter people, one of the best intentioned people I've ever come across in government service. One of the most pained people I've ever met after going through what he went through with his testimony at the UN. And I asked him afterwards, I said, how did they do that? He said, I spent 3 full days and nights down at the agency asking every conceivable question, looking at every conceivable document that they showed me. He said, but evidently I didn't see it all. They pulled a ruse on the American people. They pulled a ruse on the Senate and the Congress of the United States. I was one of the people in small groups that was called down to the Pentagon and met with Donald Rumsfeld 2 days before the vote. I remember it very well. There were 13 members of the Congress, Democrats and Republicans. Sat around a big table and he served bagels. He had 4-star generals in different places around this big square table. Somebody asked him about testimony that was given in the Senate the day before. Happened to be the director of the CIA, talking to a Senate committee in which he was asked a question. CIA director, that is, about if we do this, going to war. There would be, said the Times, New York Times, that morning, a retaliation against Israel. And that was the testimony before the Senate, in public. So the question was, how can we do this if Israel's going to be attacked? He said, well, we don't think Israel's going to be attacked. He said, but the CIA director said it, according to the newspaper, in public yesterday. And Donald Rumsfeld said, yes, but he didn't say that with a high degree of confidence. I was sitting 2 seats to Rumsfeld's right. And I said, what? Never heard that phrase before. He says, well, we answer questions and give opinions. It's with a high degree of confidence, an average degree of confidence, or a low degree of confidence. He answered that question with a low degree of confidence. I said, what? In my world, questions have 2 answers. It's yes or no. I said, does this mean anytime somebody from the administration answers a question before one of our committees, we have to say to the member of the administration, secretary or not, is that yes or no with a high degree of confidence or a low degree of confidence? And he laughed. On the wall around this table, forgive me, this is a long answer, but I've never told this story. And I can't go to jail for telling it now.
No, you should.
Maybe I should.
Yeah. You can't bring back the dead, Congressman.
Thank you.
Not everyone was duped. Some people were duped.
Yeah, I know. You should be happy. I'm not there. And I know you are.
Oh, it's accountability. It's accountability and responsibility for our actions.
Yeah, let's not have this discussion right now, because that's not the point. There's a picture on the wall among several that were being shown with projectors. And one of them was a factory in Iraq. That whoever it was that was explaining what the factory was says, you can see this picture, and they projected these on the wall, which shows what it looked like 2 days before the second picture. And there were trucks that were leaving, that were pulling up. There was smoke coming out of the smokestack, and it was a nuclear facility in Iraq, they said, that was active several days before. And then they showed the picture currently where they had taken everything out and there were no trucks and no smoke. I asked the next question to the secretary. I said, that picture, and I don't have a photographic memory, looks very familiar to me. Because I was in this room not that long ago, and Colin Powell, during the last Iraq war, showed what I think was that exact same factory. is this a current picture? This is a decade later. Is this that same factory? He said, I assure you that this is a very current picture. To which, with my acerbic sense of humor, said, is that with a high or low degree of confidence? And he chuckled and said, I assure you, with a high degree of confidence, that was bullshit. But I couldn't swear that it was the same exact picture. Afterwards, when I became a critic of the war, I asked them at a briefing when things didn't seem to be going the way they were talking about, what about that time that you said, and I mentioned the picture, this is before a huge group of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Armed Services Committee in a secure place. And he said, let me check into that. I don't remember that. And he sent me a letter a week later that said the whole thing was a product of my imagination. I learned that day that there's a big difference between being wrong, between being bad, and being evil. I believe him and Cheney were and remain pure evil. To have done that to our country and to its elected representatives who are responsible for our actions. And I assure you, there is nobody, I shouldn't assure you because then maybe there is, who felt more pain watching this thing than anybody else. Because I participated in enabling the President of the United States the ability to go to war anytime, any place, because I thought it was prudent that we remain nimble in the face of what we were shown and proven. It's like when you're on a jury and the guy they bring before you is the worst son of a bitch in the world and everybody knows who he is. And the prosecutors make the case against him. And the defense stands up and they have no case. And you find him guilty. And then what do you do later on when you find out that this very bad and evil guy wasn't guilty of that crime, even though he was a very evil guy? I don't believe in the death penalty. I've considered myself all my life a pacifist. So this is particularly painful. But if there's any solace in this, and there is not, I would tell you with a high degree of certainty that if we had not passed the ball to the President, and we voted directly as a Congress that day, and a Senate that day, according to the Constitution, to exercise our responsibility to declare war and not pass it along to the President, that would have passed by the same exact vote in both houses. It would have been almost zero difference, because everybody, for whatever reason, came to conclusions. And it was a terrible moment. Certainly an abdication of our responsibility, for which we all have to answer. Sorry for that vote. It was a very painful vote. But you know, if you go back in history based on and do something over, usually you do the same exact thing if you only knew what you knew then, because you did it because of a real logical reason. But we will live with this lesson, hopefully, that we will learn. I want to thank Mr. Donahue for making the film. He's a very courageous guy. He's paid for that courage with a part of his career, and he's still trying to make the point. But I couldn't, and you probably couldn't help but notice in the last 5-minute segue, from the back of the heads of that crowd, there was hardly anybody who didn't have white hair, if they had hair at all. The public does not participate enough and keep the feet to the fire of those people who are ultimately responsible for them. So I just want to say thank you. And I do hope that more people see this. There'll be a regrettable spike in the attention that this gets sometime 2 weeks from now, when Thomas, if I remember correctly, said on the 20th he's going to stop eating and pull the plug on himself. There'll be some interest then, and I hope that interest somehow builds. Thank you very much for what you're doing.